Namaskar, this is Professor Aman Agarwal from Indian Institute of Finance. I am very happy to welcome Mr. Anil Swarup with us today, who is an IAS officer from the batch of 1981. I'm also very happy to welcome all of you to be joining us for this series on the essence of life and growth. Before I begin, I would like to give the disclaimer. We are observing all the norms and nomenclature as an advisory issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs in conducting online meetings or on Zoom and other platforms. We have requested everybody to kindly keep their audios and videos off while the session is on. We will open them at the end for the question answer session for people who want to ask questions. They're requested to raise their hands and we will go to each one of them and ask questions. But during the session going on, requested everybody to keep their mics as well as videos off. If you do not do so, the cyber head would take you off the room. I'm very happy to share, we have had prominent speakers. Yesterday we had a spiritualist, a person who has been from the science fraternity, a person who has lived his life and grown education. We have another yet, a person who has contributed to the field of education extensively, being with the Ministry of Labor and Employment for a large number of years and contributing to developing human capital in this country. Yet another leader stalwart today with us. Before I pass on the mic and we begin our discussion today, the whole aspect of inducing this series was to bring in positivity in the environment by people from across the globe coming and sharing their views and opinions. I'm happy to share that we have had people from almost about 6 countries, different countries come up, from the US, from the UAE, from Sweden. We're having someone from Japan come in and various other leaders from across the globe. We are from Uzbekistan. People from the different walks of life. We have had a Hollywood actress, we've had professors, we've had scientists, we've had behavioralists, we have had doctors. We had 2 days back from AIMS, Dr. Chandrakant Pandav, who was the head of the department, coming here again, people who have seen life very closely. I am very happy to welcome in the audience some very prominent people who I've known. Many of you are good researchers and I know you are principals and heads of institutions. I'm sorry, I do not know many of you, but ones I know, I thought I should welcome them. Professor P.B. Sharma has joined us today, and we are very happy that he has joined. We were blessed with his words yesterday, and I must compliment that has been received very well. I have been receiving messages from all over the world where they have liked his intake and in the intake of life and how he merges Vedic sciences with spirituality and the happy living. Then we have Professor Ashok Laha, who is an entrepreneur from the US, runs an American company called Intera IT, who has joined us as well. And Dr. Sadar from UAE, who has been an alumni, who is a risk head. Mr. M. Narendran, who has been the chairman of Indian Overseas Bank. Mr. Gupta has been coming from automobile industry. I do not know him personally, but then I have been seeing him regular since the very beginning of our series. And we have Professor Manju Agarwal, who is the dean at the institute. She has been former principal of Motilal Nehru College at the University of Delhi and has serviced the government of India for all her life and a great academician as well. So we're very happy to welcome you and other research fellows and principals and heads of institutions. I will now go to Mr. Swarup, who has been an expert, who has worked extensively. And before I do that, I would like to introduce him. Mr. Swarup is now a renowned author. He produced this book, which I feel is a must read for every executive who is moving into the industry or in the bureaucracy, which is about not just a civil servant. I think one of the great contributions which has out after his completing his term, and it is amazing to see this work of his which is there. He's also the founder chairman of Nexus of Goods as of now, but he has served the government of India and the people of this country by being the secretary of primary education, school education as we call, from 2016 to 18, which is very important because it is the primary education which is the building block. As I say, if the foundation of the house is not strong, then the house will fall, even if how beautiful or architect it is. But if the foundation is not strong, and that's where the primary education is key critical for any nation to go forward, because that lays the foundation for a human being, that lays the foundation for his going forward. And fortunately, India has been blessed that we are the largest technical manpower provider in the world, even today. And that is primary responsibility goes on. The benefit goes to the primary education which we have in this country. May not be very good, but it is one best amongst large number of countries around the world. He's also been secretary for the Coal, Ministry of Coal from 2014 to 16, but primarily he has been with the Ministry of Labor and Employment from 2006 to 2013. He was directly there as Director General and serving at various positions in the ministry. So we are very happy, and we like to thank Mr. Swaroop to have joined us today to give his insight on the S of life and growth. As I requested you, Mr. Swaroop, we are talking about life and growth from your own personal experiences of over 4 to 5, 6 decades of work. And as we started this series, we felt that, the prime purpose of it was people who have about 5 to 6 decades. And we understand that in the span of 5 to 6 decades, one is able to see all colors of life, all ups and downs, whether it is personal life, professional life, economies around the world. So from there, he develops a perception. So we wanted that insight of yours from your life as well. So to begin with, I would like you, if you could throw some light on what do you understand from when we say life and when we say growth. What does these two words mean to you?
To me, life and growth are personal choices that each individual has to make. I have always believed that each individual has a choice to make. What he thinks about his own life and what he believes to be the growth. It cannot be imposed by anybody else. You have to determine your own value systems, and that will ultimately determine your life. It can be influenced by where you are born, how you grow up, where you study, who are your friends, who are your colleagues. It gets influenced by that, but your own value system determines what your life is. You have to then define what you want in life. People have quite frequently asked me this question: what was your objective in life? Or for that matter, what was your objective as a civil servant? Because most of my life was spent as a civil servant. And it is over a period of time that I discovered I didn't have a definition to begin with. Mind you, I have written in my book that I became a civil servant because my father wanted me to become a civil servant. I had no choice. But at the end of 38 years, which forms the last chapter of my book, I've indicated that if I were to be born again, I would like to be a civil servant all over. The reason was very simple. I think this civil service provides enormous opportunity for you to serve people. And if you can derive some kick out of it, and I'll define what I mean by kick, that's the objective of life, which makes you inherently feel good. Now, each individual will have to define as to what is good to himself. I cannot tell him. I can share my experience as to what I found, something which gave me a kick. But there would be somebody else who will say that this does not give me a kick, something else gives me a kick. That's a personal choice. And that's what I said in the beginning. That's what life is. That's how you define life. Each individual has to define his own life. He can obviously learn from others. That's, again, a choice that an individual has. So goes with growth. My understanding of growth could be very different from understanding of growth of somebody else. For an economist, for a pure economist, it would be GDP. For a sociologist, it would have a different meaning. As a civil servant, it may have a different meaning. So each individual will have a different growth. As a person, I feel that I am growing if I continue to learn. I feel that I am growing if I derive satisfaction out of helping others without expecting anything from him. So that's the level of growth that I see. Now, it may have a different meaning to different persons. So as I said in the beginning, both life and growth can have different meanings for individuals. But if the individual himself sees that this is what growth is, he's true to himself, he should try and pursue that growth path. Whether it's personal growth path or growth of a society or a growth of a community, that's a choice that he has to make.
No, I agree with you. And as you rightly said that though you did not want to get into civil services, but then you have enjoyed the journey.
Let me correct you. Let me correct you. I did not say that I didn't want to become a civil servant. I did not have a choice. Okay. My father decided that I would be a civil servant. There's a difference between. There is a conscious choice that you made. There is an indifference that you have, or you are opposed to something. There are three different things. I was, indifferent to begin with, but then it became my mission. As I did my graduation, it became my mission because I wanted my father, his dream to be fulfilled. So it became a mission. True. And it's very important in life. Because so long as you can adopt any objective as your own and you internalize it, then you get the passion and the drive to achieve that mission. It may not belong to you to begin with. It may come from somewhere else. But without that passion, without that internalization, I don't think anyone can succeed in life. For me, that is life.
I fully agree and appreciate, and you know, with the way that you know was chalked for you and drafted for you, and then you started living it and enjoying it. You know, I also read the other day that invest in yourself if you want to induce growth and happy living. So, how do you see this perception from your own?
Sorry, trust.
Invest in yourself.
Oh yes.
To induce growth and happy living.
See, I have always been a great believer that I have no control over objective conditions. I have no control over others. The only person that I have control over is myself. And that is why, of course, this couplet came much later, but this is how to evolve. खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से कुछ पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. So unless you invest in yourself, unless you improve yourself as an individual, unless you grow as an individual, there's no way that you can succeed, or there's no way that you can influence others. So hence, investment has to be in yourself, emotionally, intellectually, in all forms. And I have always believed, even at this stage of my life, I believe I can still grow, I can still learn. I mean, I'm glad that people like Professor Sharma are sitting here. I mean, my interactions with him have been periods of learning for me. So whoever I interact with, I imbibe a lot of learning from them. So I keep growing. The day I stop growing, I don't think I'll exist. I'll cease to exist. So I have to invest in myself. And I jokingly, when I talk to my students, I teach somewhere, I tell them I'm basically very selfish. I am selfish because I'm totally focused on myself. I do believe that since I can't do anything to anybody else, I have to. If I don't, then I, in any case, will not influence anybody else. And I have always said, and I am now convinced, that we are unnecessarily obsessed with nation and society and what to do with them. There's so many people thinking about the nation and society. I keep telling everyone, become selfish. The reason is very simple. If you look inwards, you'll find answers. The answers are there. So you have to look inwards. You have to evolve as an individual. And in the morning or late in the night, as you go to bed, look in the mirror and see, did you do what you could do? Period. Beyond it, it's frustration. Because if you look beyond it, I read this wonderful American monk called Reinhold Niebuhr, and he makes a very seminal statement. He said, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things that I can, and wisdom to understand the difference between the two. This is very important. I tell this to civil servants also. Otherwise, it leads to frustration. You know, our obsession with areas over which we have no control leaves us little time to do things over areas over which we have control. And I tell you with my own personal experience, we have enormous control over enormous area. We sometimes are oblivious of it because we are so obsessed with issues over which we have no control.
So when we're going through this process of investing in yourself, the second part, which I wanted also, if you can highlight, how do you go about inducing happiness in life? You can live through, you can grow, fine, but then inducing that happiness is important as well, in my opinion.
Let me explain this to you again. The term happiness has a subjective connotation. Each one has its own. And let me narrate a personal experience in this regard. I was posted as Secretary Horticulture in Government of UP. For some reason, and that's a story told in my book, I was transferred out. And I was transferred out because I was trying to protect an officer. And the minister went and met the chief minister, and he got me transferred out. So the chief secretary called me. He was very upset. He said, just because you wanted to protect him, you have been transferred out. So I answered him as follows. I told him, sir, why are you worried about transfers? For a civil servant, transfer is like death. It is inevitable. It had to happen. If something which is inevitable, why worry about it? And moreover, I believe in Hindu philosophy. I'm going to be born again. I can continue to commit the same crimes which I committed here. So for me, that was happiness in the sense of having protected an officer. Now, having joined an organization thereafter, which was sick and making losses for 7 years, my job was to wind it up. So what did I do? I spent a few sleepless nights, then came to a particular solution. Now, I'm not going to the details of it. Then I addressed the entire official lot of 300 and told them what solution I had in mind. So idea was great. Everyone agreed. Because in India, there is no dearth of ideas. But to fructify an idea and to sustain it, It has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable. So I had to make this idea work. So one of the aspects of making the idea work was to improve the recovery of that financial institution. It was very important. So what did I do? I called the most corrupt general manager over a cup of tea. And people asked me, why did you do that? I said, most of the corrupt people are extremely efficient. It's only the direction is wrong. So I had a long chat with him. I started the discussion by telling him, यार देखो इस संस्था में कुछ बचा तो है नहीं, तुम चूसोगे क्या? And these are the words that I used. He was shocked because no matter how corrupt you are, you will never admit to be corrupt. I said, okay, chalo बीती ताहे बिसार दे. What you've done is done. Now I'm trying to recover this whole thing. Are you with me? He said, I am totally with you. Now look at what happens. He put his heart and soul. Recovery is improved. The organization made profit. And since it became profitable, someone else wanted to come in my place and I was transferred out. I was bothered. But I was concerned about this individual. I used to find out about this general manager and people told me, sir, wo to hriday parivartan ho gaya. He's doing so wonderfully now. Na wo paisa leta hai na deta hai. So I called him for a cup of tea at my home. And I asked him, yaar, tumhari log badi tareef karte hain. Ye kaise ho gaya tumhe? Then, you know, his answer was remarkable. He said, sir, अब जो मैं कर रहा हूं और जब आप मेरी 300 अफसर के सामने पीठ थपथपाते थे तो जो किक मुझे तब मिलती थी वो मुझे पहले कभी नहीं मिलती. Now this is the kick that I'm talking of. This is, I can go on and on. My book is filled with such kicks. I call them my Bharat Ratnas. Now it is this kick that gives you happiness, and my happiness cannot be defined by anybody else. It is happiness that I feel within. And once you start enjoying this happiness, then you don't leave it. That's the happiness. Again, as I keep saying, that may not be happiness for somebody else. It's purely subjective to me. I feel kicked. I feel passionate about it. So I pursue that happiness even post-retirement. Sorry for this long talk on this.
No, not at all.
Have been explained without this.
We are looking at people wanting to share their own personal experiences so that people can understand and appreciate this very basic nuance of life, which is looking at happiness and wanting to look at positivity. You know, I also read the other day in one of the speaking sheets which said, positivity is the key of unlocking good luck. Do you feel so as well?
Absolutely. Unless you are positive, how do you expect to influence others? Let me give you another example from my own career. When I was posted as coal secretary, I had no clue about coal. So I rang up a friend of mine and asked him, yaar, ye coal sector kaisa hai? So instead of answering my question, he asked me a question. Gangs of Wasseypur dekhi hai kya? So that explained everything. I knew what the coal sector was. Anything that could have gone wrong had gone wrong with the sector. In fact, when I walked into my room as coal secretary, I felt like walking into a graveyard. Because CBI was after the files, all the scams had happened, they were after officers. Now, what do you do in that situation? Absolutely depressing. Now, how I looked at it. Of course, it happened over a period of time that I developed this mentality. I said, yaar, yahan sthiti itni kharab hai, ki jo bhi hoga, wo improvement hoga. And then I can walk away with that credit. So in an absolutely desperate situation, I was looking at positivity, and I'm not saying what happened thereafter, because again, that's a long story, but look at what happened. I was spending 24/7 in the office for the first 2-3 months. I used to live in the office. At the end of 2 years, I had only 45 minutes of work. The coal crisis had been sorted out lock, stock, and barrel. From sheer scarcity of coal, we were contemplating export of coal to Bangladesh. Now this happened because of the positive energy that prevailed in that room. And we used to jokingly say that you give us the Kashmir problem, we'll find a solution to that problem. You know, without that positive energy, without that positivity, how do you expect? And it radiates actually. I mean, many of you would have read Rhonda Byrne or Paulo Coelho or Robin Sharma, all of them say this. If you have that positive energy in you, the whole world will conspire to make it happen. I have believed in that because I've experienced that. No matter what the situation is, if you are positive in your approach, you will find solutions. In every case I found, I may have ultimately succeeded or failed. That's a different matter. I don't know what happens, but I have enjoyed every moment of my existence because I was replete. I was filled with positive energy of attempting to find a solution. Whether I found it or not, that's a different matter. But I think the yearning was always there to find a solution.
True. No, I couldn't agree less. You know, I was reading this quote from Rig Veda, which beautifully puts it. For thousands and hundreds of years, if you want to enjoy the fruits and happiness of life, take systemic planting of trees. Now, it's not only a question of physically planting trees, but how do you see this particular quote in your own lifespan and how it has come through for you?
The results don't come from nowhere. No, they come from what you do. And this is a brick by brick building, and don't get seen immediately. So what you see of an individual today is the input that he has provided throughout his life. And hence every input becomes extremely important in terms of creation of a personality. And hence, as Secretary Education, as luck would have it, when I was posted as Secretary Education, I had absolutely no experience in education. No experience whatsoever. That's what government does to you. But I enjoyed it so thoroughly that at that stage, late stage of my time, I could learn from people like Professor Sharma and others, where so many learned people were around you. But then what held me was the bricks that I had built earlier in terms of being open, receptacle of learning. Now, if I had closed my mind, I wouldn't learn. So that's a tendency that developed. My mother put it into me, my dad put it into me, that you should be a learner throughout your life. This at no point in time. Now, these are जो हमारे यहाँ संस्कार जिसे कहते हैं, जो संस्कार आप में आते हैं, वही, because they are inputs that come to you from, right? And hence, primary education becomes very important. That's the time where the initial seeding gets happened. I mean, it's unfortunate that I was there for only about 20 months. In all my assignments, I made myself totally redundant, in coal especially, and before that. I used to create institutions and get out. It was only as Secretary Education that I felt probably I should have continued longer, because those seedlings require a greater attention, and we messed it up big time.
No, I agree, and I saw you, and because that's when we met at a conference, and then we connected. So I had seen you speak, and then I could see how things were going. I was eating one of these Buddhist monks again in one of these speaking trees, which came about a couple of, I would say a month back or so. We said, do nothing. This is after the corona had come in person, but it's nothing to do with corona as such. But he says, do nothing, because he says, running has become a habit for all of us. And, we need to stop running and do nothing. How do you see this particular stance where, the Buddhist monk is trying to say, do nothing? And now the world is also realizing, when it comes to even a problem like corona as a pandemic, they're saying, we need to live with it. We need to go forward with it. It's not something we can take it off completely.
Let us try and understand Gautam Buddha.
Yes.
Okay, let us try and understand. When a comment is made that do nothing, it doesn't mean that you sit at home and do nothing. Correct. This nothing is about areas over which you have absolutely no control. And let me give you a totally different example. Before I joined the IAS, I was in the police service. So there was a friend of mine who's batchmate who retired recently as DGP. At that point in time, I'm talking of 1980. He walked up to me. He said, "Boss, रात को नींद नहीं आ रही." हमने कहा क्या हो गया? बोले, "बॉस, पेट्रोलियम के दाम बहुत बढ़ रहे हैं." हमने कहा, यार तुम्हारी नींद, तुम्हारे ना सोने से क्या पेट्रोलियम के दाम नीचे आ जाएंगे? बोले, वो तो नहीं, लेकिन देश की आर्थिक स्थिति पर कुप्रभाव पड़ रहा है। हमने कहा, तुम उसका कुछ कर सकते हो क्या? बोले, यार कर नहीं सकते। तो मैंने कहा, जिसका कर नहीं सकते उसका बेकार चिंतन क्यों कर रहे हो? जाके आराम से सो, हाँ डिस्कशन करो, कोशिश करो, लेकिन उस बात पे चिंतन ना करो। चला गया। 3 महीने बाद फिर आया मेरे पास, फिर कहता है, बॉस रात को नींद नहीं आ रही। मैंने कहा, यार ऐसा है, पेट्रोलियम के दाम तो अपने आप नीचे हो गए बिना तुम्हारे इंटरवेंशन के, तुम क्यों परेशान हो? बोले, नहीं बॉस, इंडिया की पॉपुलेशन बहुत बढ़ रही है। मैंने कहा, यार ऐसा है, रात को सो जाओ, अपने आप ठीक हो जाएगी। So the point that I am trying to drive home here, when I say do nothing about issues over which you can't do anything. But do nothing doesn't mean you sit idle and do nothing. So we must understand the context of do nothing. We get hassled over issues over which we have absolutely no control. I learned it in a very simple manner. I used to get very agitated when I used to get stuck in traffic jams. And I had got recently married. So my wife was accompanying me. So when I got very agitated and I was really tearing my hair out. So she said, "इसका कुछ कर सकते हो तुम?" So I said, "कुछ नहीं कर सकते." तो बोले, "अपना खून क्यों जला रहे हो?" This is do nothing. So you must understand this.
True. No, you put it very beautifully in a very simple manner. And I think that is what I wanted to, in fact, come out and hear from you as well. We have also mentioned these spirituality, soul consciousness, and even as a matter of fact, meditation. So how do you see these 3 aspects in life, which is being talked about internationally today, which we have been talking in India for ages? How do you see them inducing life and growth?
So let me explain to you my understanding of meditation. My understanding of meditation is when I'm so focused that I become totally oblivious of my surroundings. To me, that is meditation. It's not sitting in a temple or going to Himalayas. It could be that also. I'm not saying it's not that, but it's not limited to that. So when I compose music with my Spanish guitar and I'm playing my guitar and trying to find the right note, I'm meditating. To me, that is pure meditation. Because I remember distinctly when I used to do that, my wife used to call me and I was not listening to her. Similarly, when I watch the India-Pakistan cricket match and it's very crucial at a point in time, and I'm so focused that I'm totally oblivious of the world around, I'm meditating. Meditation does not necessarily mean what is normally understood. To me, that is meditation. So even in an office, when I'm actually so absorbed in a note that I don't know who's calling me, who's talking. In fact, I didn't even notice people coming in and going out. To me, that is meditation. So I have a slightly different definition of meditation. People disagree with me, but that's how life is. You have disagreements.
True, true. We all live life. We all grow through life. But how does one go about celebrating life?
I am not a great believer in celebrating life. I am a great believer in celebrating moments. I've always told everyone, enjoy the moments that you're in. The past is gone, dead and gone. You can't do a nut to it. Future, you don't know what's going to happen. The best celebration of life is enjoying the moments that you're in. I'm chatting with you. I'm loving it. If I won't love it, I had a choice. I would have moved out. I love this discussion. I'm enjoying it. That to me is celebration of life. I don't believe in huge celebrations. I mean, people do believe in it. I'm sure they must be enjoying it. I don't do that. I love the moments that I'm in, and I have loved the way that I've lived. I love to live that in future as well.
True. There have been large number of uncertainties which have been boggling around the world for almost now 2 decades. It's not something happening new. Governments have been boggled, people have been boggled, something or the other keeps coming up. But life has moved on. And we've been researching on pandemics and all, and disaster situations around the world. These things have been there for over 3,000, 4,000 years. It's nothing new. But given that and the positivity you have in life, how do you see life shaping up maybe the next 6 months to a year?
Oh, life is going to be wonderful. Again, as I keep saying, it's your subjective judgment of, yes. Even in this COVID, look at this. I mean, I didn't want to discuss that, but since you mentioned it, look at this COVID crisis. Look at the positive aspects that have emerged out of this. We've started understanding individuals much more. We've started understanding of human expansion. We've started understanding the power of technology. There's so many positives in it. Let's look at those positives and build on them. And there are lessons from it. Please don't commit the mistakes that you've been committing. So it's a time to introspect. Look back, because as you said in the beginning, we've been traveling so fast that we have not had time to reflect on what's going on. Okay. This is a time for reflection. It's a huge time for reflection. Let's sit down and reflect. And what went wrong? Can we correct it? Yes. So I would look at it. It's there. COVID is there. I couldn't do a nut about it. Can I make the best out of it? I'm trying to make the best out of it. As I said, I'm addressing so many people. Before COVID happened, post-retirement, I was traveling thrice a week. It was mind-boggling. To some destination in the country to talk to some audience, ranging from school children to scientists at Missile Center, at Kalapakkam Nuclear. I used to go there and talk to them on a variety of issues. Now, I loved that. I loved interaction. But as an old man, I used to feel tired. Now, look at what has happened. Now, I'm addressing hundreds of people almost every day with no tension whatsoever, no physical stress. So that's the beauty of it. So I'm looking at it that way. COVID khatam ho jayega to uska bhi maza lenge.
True. I think we need to learn, as you rightly said, we must learn to enjoy the moments we are in, and that's very critically important. What would you say would be the success mantra for you? Having come into an uncertain environment, although it was not that you did not want it, but then you came into this field with your father desiring it and you're wanting to fulfill the desire of your father, and then living through it, then creating space for your own self, creating and making yourself happy, enjoying those moments. What would you say is the success mantra for you and for every one of us to look at it from tomorrow?
No, I'm nobody to suggest a success mantra, because as I said, every individual will have to determine his own success mantra, because we have our pluses and minuses. and determine
Good.
what is good for me and leverage what is good in me and improve myself. So my success mantra has been a total focus on improving as an individual. Learn as you go along, never give up hope, and believe in the moments that you are in, believe in what you're doing, irrespective of what the results are, because you have absolutely no control over results. If you develop as an individual that way, you will have an enjoyable existence. You will not get frustrated with failures. I've had many failures in life. You'll continue to learn from those failures, and God willing, and if you deserve, you will get some successes also. Love the moments that you're in, because you don't know anything about what's there.
Yes, it's important to learn from failures. I think there are numerous examples which clearly say that we learn from failures. You have been in the government and you have been in the policy making framework. You, as you said, you were even outside the government prior to you joining services. Now, and you have seen governments have been trying to take care of uncertainties, making lives of people more comfortable, making it more appreciable. What, in your opinion, could governments, I'm not talking government of India, I'm talking in general, what, in your opinion, could governments do globally to ensure smooth induction of growth and happy living? I understand that no one can give you happiness, but actually there could be frameworks which would be created by government so that people could be having a more induced life or pleasurable life, like Corona has introduced for us now, which is not a government framework, but it is there.
I consider the biggest problem with the government is the lack of definition of the role of the government. Government has got into areas where it has no business to enter. And hence it has not had time enough, attention enough to do what it should be doing. That is something which needs to be corrected big time. Government should play the role of a facilitator and marginally as a regulator. It's reverse. Government has played the role of a regulator, not much of a facilitator. As Education Secretary, when I was trying to withdraw as a government and become a facilitator, people asked me, "Aap to Secretary Government of India, aap kya kar rahe hain?" Humne kaha, I want to evolve as a principal facilitator Government of India. And it worked beautifully.
Correct.
The fact that I am enjoying my life post-retirement, the fact that I am in touch with almost everyone there, because I was not Secretary Government of India, because I was Principal Facilitator Government of India, I tried to help people. I derived enormous amount of satisfaction and enjoyment out of helping people to do what they wanted to do, so long as it was not illegal.
I wish you would have been there in higher education also, because we have been voicing this for almost over a decade, 15 years now. But unfortunately, it has become so regulated there, and it is killing the way education should be.
The tragedy is, Mr. Agarwal, the tragedy is that we say that we want to decentralize.
Yes.
We say that we want to make bodies autonomous.
Correct.
But we do absolutely the other way around. In fact, in the informal discussion that I used to have with the minister, and I was pushing for autonomy in school, and he agreed with me. Even in the higher education, he used to agree with me, but probably at some level, the push was not that big. It should have been there. This tendency to control others comes from a distrust of others. I mean, I have believed in trusting people. I remember as co-secretary, when scams were breaking out, when a joint secretary brought a file to me, I just signed it. He said, "Sir, aapne file padhi nahi." मैंने कहा, "यार, तिहाड़ जेल साथ चलेंगे, हम अकेले थोड़ी ना जाएंगे." And he still quotes it back to me. I said, I believe in, and I have trusted people. I have had a great life because I trusted people, because it made my life very easy. I keep telling my colleagues, "Yaar, apna jeevan tum barbaad kiye ho, yaar." I mean, if you distrust people, you have as much trouble as you trust people. But your own life will be much easier if you start trusting people. It works. It works beautifully. I'm trying to hammer this in my colleagues since I interact with them quite a lot. Start trusting people. And without trust, you will not be able to let go. You have to let go. That's what do nothing is that. That monk who said, is this, don't unnecessarily indulge in issues where you need not. Get out. Do something else.
Correct. In fact, I was going to ask you the next question on trust, but in any case, you have hinted upon it and explained it beautifully. So I don't want to ponder on trust. But then, there is something which bothers most of us in many times. And that is that whenever we look at television, whether we look at newspapers, and it puzzles especially the youth in particular, which is now having this problem of plenty, is that they get a feeling that life is all about money and power. And
it is much worse.
Yes.
Sorry, it is much worse. You know, unfortunately, the nation wants to know only negative things.
Yeah.
And the higher the decibel, the more the viewership. So
Uh-huh.
the television is dishing out what you and I want. And that's the reason why I started this movement called Nexus of Good. The idea
Uh-huh.
of founding this Nexus of Good was that there's so much negativity around that we
Correct.
are unable to see positive things around. And let me again narrate an incident to you how this idea came to me. As Secretary Education, there were many advisors who came to tell me what needs to be done. I call them Rai Sahabs. They wouldn't have done anything on the ground, but they are international advisors who are paid heavily by
Uh-huh.
international organizations. They come and
Uh-huh.
advise you what to do. So I used to ask them,
Uh-huh.
यार तुम कभी field में गए हो? नहीं sir, you come to England, Finland, Holland, Scotland, New Zealand, all the lands of the world, including Swaziland. I said, have you seen motherland? So he had no answer. So I decided to look at the motherland. I traveled to
Correct.
24 states in first 3 months as education secretary. And during these travels, and these travels were not to state headquarters, the first two districts I visited were Bastar and Sukma. So in one of the travels, I visited a school in a place called Paste Pada, 120 kilometers north of Thane district, in tribal area.
Uh-huh.
That government primary school did not have electricity. So when I walked into the school, two-room school, I found that every child had a tablet. I was shocked. I asked the teacher, "Yeah, bijli kahan se laate ho?" He said, he took me around. He took me to a foldable solar panel which he had designed, through which he was charging the batteries, and through batteries he was charging the tablets. So I asked him, "ये tablet कहाँ से है? पैसे कहाँ से है?" He said, "Sir, जब मैं यहाँ आया था, तो I had a second-hand laptop, and there were about 40-50 children. Some of them never came to the school. So I used to play these educational videos to them. They got very excited. About 2 months hence, 15 parents came to the school, and they asked this teacher, Sandeep Gund, a very funny question. They asked him, पहले तो बच्चे स्कूल नहीं जाते थे, अब ये भागते हैं स्कूल, आपने क्या किया?" So he explained to them. When he found these parents interested, he made a request. He asked them, क्या आप लोग 500-500 रुपए दे सकते हैं? क्यों? I want to buy 2 tablets. So they were poor people, but they contributed. He bought 2 tablets and attached them to his laptop. This passion of the teacher was, being discussed. So an NGO and a CSR funding agency visited the school. And when they interacted with the teacher, they were so impressed that the funding agency gave money for 50 tablets. That is around that time I visited the school. And I was pleasantly shocked at the passion of this teacher in the back of the beyond. So I took a photograph with Sandeep Gund and tweeted it. He became a local hero. Other schools started visiting this school. In between, I met the President of India in a different context altogether. Since we had some time, I narrated this wonderful story to him and asked him whether he wanted to meet Sandeep Gund. He had just taken over as president. He said, "Haan, bilkul kyun nahi." So I called him over. He met the President of India. Photograph was taken and tweeted. He became a national hero. But the story doesn't end here. The Paste Pada model has now been replicated in 50,000 schools of Maharashtra. That's Nexus of Good. So you understand. So the idea of Nexus Good came there. I said, let us make it a mission to identify good work, to understand good work, to replicate good work, to scale good work. हम मुक्त कंठ से बुराई करते हैं, मुक्त कंठ से तारीफ क्यों नहीं करते? That's Nexus of Good. So I'm trying to create this positive environment, and I'll request all of you to join this movement of Nexus Good. If you find anything good, talk. हम क्यों कंजूसी करते हैं? उसकी खूब मुक्त कंठ से तारीफ कीजिए अगर आपको दिल से अच्छा लग रहा है. Let that person feel proud. Let that others find value in replicating what this guy has done. Let's do it. It can be done because it is being done.
No, I fully agree with you, and I'm in full support of your stance and the motion you have done, because that's something which I'm also wanting to bring through this series, and I'm trying to bring it from across the globe, that it is the same everywhere. People from different walks of life, whether it's a dancer or a literature person, every one of us feels the same. Then why can't we make it happen? And that's very important. And as you rightly said, we see a perfect example of where it has happened, and we can make it further happen. I have 2 more questions before you, and then I'll open the house for other people to request and ask the questions. Active spiritualism, liberalization, has led to truth of dharma. Do you feel so that that activism, active spiritual liberalization can lead to truth of dharma?
See, my understanding of spirituality is very limited. So I'm spiritual in slightly different sense. But I don't know. My bottom line is I should feel kicked and good. To me, if that is spirituality is defined that way, I have no other. I have read a lot of Vivekanand, and that's what I understood from him, that I don't have to, aspire to become a spiritual in a different context.
Correct.
Enjoy the moments, you become spiritual. I'm spiritual in that sense. Beyond it, I don't understand much of spirituality.
Mm-hmm. And my last question for now, before I open the house, I would request everybody to kindly raise their hands, whoever wishes to ask a question, so that we can go forth, with the question answer session before we end the session today. My last question is, what is your advice to the youth and the students? You know, we have a 28% median age of youth in this country, and we are a bubbling country with a lot of energy. And there are a large number of opportunities, but then people are obsessed with only some very few set of opportunities, like the Rozgar given by the government and not no one else. So given those scenarios and the negativity which is already spreading around, what would be your advice to the youth and the students?
No, I tell young people, number one, focus on the present. Number two, focus on yourself, because you have no control over others. And finally, the couplet that I had used earlier, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा क्या है.
Correct.
Evolve as an individual to be reckoned with. It is only when you evolve as an individual, then you can say this, मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए कारवां बनता गया. But the way forward is, उम्र भर यही भूल करता रहा गालिब धूल चेहरे पे थी आईना मुक्ता रहा. Focus on yourself. Don't blame others for what you are, because let them be what they are. Evolve as an individual. That's my suggestion to youngsters.
Yes, well, beautifully you have put it. I think it's like the gist of the whole thing which we have been discussing today. And now I will go to people. I would request, I see Professor Sharma is still here. I would request Professor Sharma to give. He is like my godfather. He's seen me from very childhood. We are family to each other. And he is my mentor, and I have been blessed with his presence always. I have learned so much from him. So I would request if Professor Sharma could give it insight, or maybe if he wants to ask a question, ask a question as well.
First of all, let me say it was a matter of great delight to hear every single word uttered by Sri Anil Swarup ji. I am his great admirer. Really speaking, you are an inspiration for many people, including me. And I've seen in you exemplary courage, firm conviction and resolve, and highest levels of personal and professional integrity with which one should transact his life, especially when you are dealing with public service. And we are proud of you, Swarup Sahab. You have talked about in your address about personal growth. And surely you have left it to an individual to decide how he or she want to grow. Growth usually revolves around intellectual growth, professional growth, social growth, emotional growth, but it also has something which we have been undermining, not you, but many in our nation, what we call the spiritual growth of an individual, which ultimately decides whether you are devoting every single breath of your life for the good of the larger collective good of the society. So my question to you would be, how do we go about, especially in our education system, to cultivate and nurture this very vital component of spiritual growth, both in our teachers as well as in our students, so that when they join the world of work, they become the responsible citizens of this world and give their very best in every single thing in which they engage themselves. That's my question number one. Okay. And the second question is,
let me answer the first question, because I'll forget. Okay. Yes. See, I think you've raised a very, very pertinent point. For selling any product or an idea, it is extremely important to convey a value proposition to the buyer or the recipient. Until the value proposition is associated with it, it will be pure academic exercise, and the child or the teacher will not listen to you. So we have to demonstrate to the child as well as the teacher or whoever we are interacting with him that what you are saying will be beneficial to him. Now, how do we do that? We can do that by giving examples of such people as have benefited as a consequence of the path that I am suggesting to him. Once he sees that it works, then it will be easier for him to feel convinced and then internalize what you are suggesting. Otherwise, it's pure gyan. You know, इस देश में इतने ज्ञानी पुरुष हैं सिर्फ ज्ञान बांटते हैं. So as a practitioner, I have always felt, demonstrate the efficacy of the idea or the suggestion that you are giving, and this demonstration can come by giving examples of such people who have benefited out of that. The moment he gets that, your job is done. Then you don't have to do anything. I did that through my career. Through every time in order to motivate my officers who were working with me, I gave them examples of people who have succeeded in doing what I was telling them. Because without that, without that, they will say, "Bata rahe hain, acha, theek hai, kyun nahi hota?" Like, for example, honesty, ethical behavior. Everyone talks about ethical behavior and honesty without demonstrating through clear examples that it works. In fact, in one of the chapters, my next book is titled Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, where I'm trying to drive home this point that ethical behavior pays through examples. So unless you give correct examples to which the recipient can relate, that's very important. आप टिम्बकटू की एग्जाम्पल देंगे या यूएसए की देंगे, वो रिलेट ही नहीं कर पाएगा. He has to relate to such an example which he knows around him, and there are examples available. It requires a bit of research, but it can happen.
You're absolutely right. Ethics and morality cannot be really taught. They are to be placed in an environment so that you are able to demonstrate and engage people to learn while they really practice the ethics as well as professional morals. This is how, in fact, the Gurukuls of ancient India really functioned when they were imparting education. The purpose was to also inbuild the dimension of character and dimension of integrity alongside with dimension of knowledge, of which utility and value and birth was, of course, very well built into the system. But I'll come to the next question a little later, because I think let's carry on further along this direction of growth and value system of the kind which you have so beautifully put in. I want to hear other questions coming, but it was a great delight to hear every single word uttered by you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. And we'll now go to Professor Laha. Professor Laha is also our family because he is an adjunct professor at the Indian Institute of Finance. But otherwise, he is an entrepreneur and he is heading a US-based company and running a US-based company called Intera IT. He spends most time in US and India. Fortunately, this lockdown has made us have him here because he's got no option but not to fly out and be in the US and busy with board meetings and do all that on the Zoom or other platforms like these. So, so we have had the advantage of having him with us, and I can always count on his time anytime I want. And that's the blessing I also get because of this particular framework. So I've had a large number of blessings come in during these times. And let me put it before Professor Laha now to ask whatever he would like to ask. Professor
Laha. Thanks, Aman. Good afternoon.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. I think that, we talked about the negative part of the coronavirus and everything else. I look at the positive part of it. I got a unique chance to attend the webinars, and these are the wonderful series of webinars. I probably attended most of them. I learned quite a lot. Every day I'm learning something which you talked about it. Every day I'm learning lots of things, get a chance to know most of the people, get a chance to meet people. Hopefully you're going to get a chance to see you. Now, everything what you said, you got a wonderful presentation. Everything, most of the things you said, I believe in it. I practice it, I believe in it. Everything what you said, except one thing. My father was a civil service and he asked me to join civil service. I was preparing for the IAS officer, but I'm an engineer by profession. So after graduate engineering, I was applying for the IAS service, and then in the meantime, I got a scholarship in the US. I left, I went to US. I have no regret, but I'm glad I did that. That's the difference. But everything what you said is I believe in it, everything. I guess one question is that as this coronavirus will change, someday or other, maybe 6 months, the economy will be different. Country's business will be different, completely different, And the question is that, are you ready for the business? In our company, my company is a US-based company. I'm a CEO of both companies. And I see that what you need is that the hierarchical structure has gone down. We want to hire people who are leaders. Who are leaders, you give them not the what to do, not the how to do it, type of thing. We need the people who have excellent communication skills, they take ownership and get it done. Education system here, I don't see too many people. We hire lots of new college graduates, including lots of people from the MIT also. We hired them. But we don't see that. People, particularly fresh college graduates, they come there. They basically are reluctant to make a decision because they think somebody, if they make mistakes, they will be frowned upon. They will be taken to task. So I think that my feeling is that if you change the education culture somehow or other, from the primary school, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to take a leadership role. And the communication is most important. Communication is not that communication, my definition is that what I'm telling you, if you cannot articulate, if you cannot understand what I said, I'm a poor communicator. So how to put those things in a communication, in an education system, rather than just reading the books, having great GPA, and move on.
First of all, let me say that I agree with what you say. That is the need of the hour. We have to enable or allow people to commit mistakes.
Yeah.
And to do that, the first thing that will need to be done is charity will have to begin at home. Before the child goes to the school, he's with his parents. And what do we do when a child commits a fault at home? Since you've left India for a long time, in India, they slap the child straight away. So that's the social culture that we have in our country, where right from day one, a child is hit the moment he commits a mistake. That's the culture we invite. Education alone cannot do it. It has to start with parents even before the child goes to the school, he's not afraid of committing mistakes. He becomes very afraid. You and I have been through that childhood. You and I know how our parents treated us. Not many. Now, of course, it's changing. I see that my daughter and my son, to their children, they are slightly different, their approach. They are not as aggressive when the child commits a mistake. They're talking to them. They're trying to get out of it. It's changing gradually. With the school's education system, again, to me, the biggest problem arises because of the total emphasis on competition. And I'm trying to propagate this, that this competition business is nonsense, because every individual is unique in his own way. If an individual has to compete, he has to compete with himself, and he has to learn from others. Now, this is very easier said than done, because everywhere there's competition. You have, even in the government, there is a ranking going on of districts, of states, because that's how we evolved as competitors, not as competing with ourselves, but competing with others. So we find some way to climb the ladder over others. Again, as I said, it's easier said than done. It requires a much greater indulgence. And that's why, if you heard me, this was the only assignment as school education secretary where at the end of the day, I felt I should have had more time. In my 38 years of career, not in a single assignment did I feel this way. Because I'll tell you why. When I was posted as education secretary, someone asked me, "Kaisa lag raha hai aapko?" In coal, I had answered gangs of Wasseypur. Here, I answered that question. I said, in coal, all the mining was underground, the mafias were overground. In education, it's the other way around. All the mafias are underground, eating into the essentials of Indian education system. And the tragedy is that the political decision maker is not bothered. Why? Because education does not impact his vote immediately. Education has its impact 10 years down the line. So he's totally oblivious. Look at what had happened. I was the 5th school education secretary in 2.5 years of the previous government. The budget of the education was coming down because the politician did not understand the implication. Of course, it is changing now. I'll tell you, in the 2 years that I was there, I really hammered it hard. I tried to convince my political masters that this can be devastating. But then, as I said, it is so deeply entrenched that it requires a much longer and a greater intervention. I have written a few articles. If you want, I can share with you on what really needs to be done. I cannot expound on that at this point in time for paucity of time. And the first part that you said about the economy, Indian economy, today my article has appeared in Millennium Post, where I have looked at some of the aspects of attracting investment into India. So, I have some time post-retirement to pen down my thoughts, which I couldn't when I was in the service, but I do that quite frequently. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok. We will go to 3 questions which are there from Ms. Shobha Singh, then Venu Madha, Dr. Vadimada, and Dr. Pooja Kushwala. But before that, I will request Mr. M. Narendran, who joined us also, to kindly, he's an old friend of mine now. I've been on a couple of with him, and I've learned a lot from him, sharing his experiences. As I said, Mr. M. Narendran has been chairman for Indian Overseas Bank. I will just unmute you on Narendraji, then you can ask or comment whatever you like, so that then we can go forward from there on.
Thank you, Aman Agarwal ji. This is a very great work by your institute. You have been continuously doing a lot of programs, and I have been, but of course, today Anil Sarup is one of the greatest, very well accomplished IAS officer you could get him. We were in one or SOCM function in Management Development Institute in Gurgaon, where he was the speaker, and I had seen that he is a very very frank and directly, and his articles are also I had an opportunity to read, and today it was a pleasant to hear his certain beliefs which is firmly in him. Otherwise, to have that beliefs and achieve success, as of course whether in government service or IAS service, not so easy, but he could achieve. Now it's only a hypothetical question I am asking Anil Sarup Saab. Suppose he would be the Secretary Health today of the central government. What Anil Sarup would have taken some initiative in terms of giving something strong, positive vibration for our Indian government and our Prime Minister and all of them to face this situation.
I think we have an absolutely fabulous officer in the Secretary Health right now, and she is doing a very good job. I know her personally and professionally.
Yes,
very
sir.
Fine officer. Not that much I can add. My only suggestion, if I were to give a suggestion to her to do, is enable the state governments to evolve. Not too many directions from the center. Centralization doesn't help. India is a very vast country, and each state, in fact, each district has to evolve its own strategy. So right in the beginning, I have written something on this also. I used to wonder, why are we imposing same restrictions throughout the country? I'm glad that the government listened and allowed decision making to happen at the local level. Now, let me explain this to you. Within the district, the decision making should be of the district. Inter-district, the decision should be of the state. And interstate, the decision should be of the center. Now, if you start defining everything, in fact, unfortunately, some of us in Delhi believe that all wisdom resides in Delhi, which is so very wrong. I mean, there's so much wisdom around the country. Why are we doubting the wisdom of those people? We can devise broad guidelines. In fact, when this education policy was being formulated, and I was education secretary, Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who chaired that committee, came over to meet me, and he asked me about my suggestions. I said, why are you wasting your time? He looked at me, why? I said, how can you have a single policy for this country like ours? If you want to prepare action plans for every state separately, clearly identifying what needs to be done, how it will be done, who will do it, by when it will be done. The rest of it is just gyan. You just have a policy. If a teacher doesn't go to school in Kerala, he is likely to be lynched. In UP, they consider it as their right not to go to the school. How can you have a policy sitting in Delhi? So in Delhi, you can have a broad framework. You can advise, guide, help, assist, but you can't do everything. My only problem with the dispensation now is that on occasions we give the impression that we would drive everything. No, we should become facilitators. I said that and I repeat it.
Good, sir. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Narendran. I'll now go to Ms. Shobha Singh, who is in fact one of our graduates from the Institute, an MBA graduate, passing out this year. Just a second. Shobha, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So it's really been an honor for me to listen to you and have an opportunity to ask questions from you. So my question is that how you see in the present scenario the extent of discipline and sacrifices, or in what way it is necessary to accomplish a career with honor and something like people who reach beyond boundaries in their professional career and as well as in their life. And I would also like to add that what it means to you in 2020 with all your experiences.
You know, my experience has been, and I stated that earlier also, that stop bothering about what others think about you. We waste so much time in because what we wear, what we speak, we are so concerned about others that we lose that focus on ourselves. So my suggestion to you, I am treating you as a young, you will be as old as my daughter, young friend, that don't stop bothering about others. Focus on look inwards and see what are your strengths, build on your strengths. Identify your weakness and sit with somebody who can guide you to overcome those weaknesses. That's it. Beyond it, don't bother about देश और समाज की चिंता फिलहाल ना कीजिए. इतने लोग लगे हुए चिंता में, सब जने देश और समाज की सोच रहे हैं. यहाँ क्या होना चाहिए, वहाँ क्या होना चाहिए, हो जाएगा. वो जो मंक ने कहा था, जो आपने बुद्धिस्ट मंक की बात कही थी, जो कहा था ना, बिल्कुल सही कहा. Do nothing about others. उनको करने दीजिए आप अपना सोचिए. Become selfish.
Thank you. That's a very important advice which people need, to young people especially. I'll now go to Mr. Venu Madhav Vanukeseda. I would request if he can kindly introduce himself. And I understand there's a Dr. Pooja Kusuwala wants to ask. Kindly ask her to open her video if you want to ask a question. Otherwise, I will not open the audio. I will now go to, as I said, unmute Mr. Venu Madhav. Kindly ask a question. Please introduce yourself, where you're from, which organization, and what you do, and then ask a question, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
My name is Dr. Venu Madhav, working as Associate Professor in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Sainikpuri, Hyderabad. Rather, you have already answered my question in the previous question itself. My question was very simple and straight, and I was doubting right from the day one when I joined into this profession that whether this education should be a state subject or central subject. That is one thing. And the second one is, if it is in the central subject, what should be the common curriculum? If it is a state subject, what are the dynamic points to be kept in mind when we are designing the education policy? And I also understand as an academician that education is like any other essential commodity like water, cloth, and we don't survive without that. So just try to.
Okay, so I'm so glad that education today is in the concurrent list. Very rightly so.
I know.
Because there is certain national aspects which have to be determined by the center, and rest of it should be left to the states. That's how the provision is. That's how it should be.
Sir.
Because there are certain national boundaries that need to be defined at the national level. State can't be left totally alone. But beyond those boundaries, and I gave an example, you cannot define everything for a state. Let the state do it. So I'm so glad it is that way. It's a different matter that sometimes an overindulgent center tries to direct the state on what they should do. I'm not in favor of that. We should sit, negotiate, discuss, and find a solution. That's the beauty of federal structure that we have. And that's how the concurrent list should work.
But some of the state governments are trying to follow the footprints of the central government, sir. They're trying to be more clone to the central policy.
That's the choice that the state governments have. If they want to follow a central pattern, so be it. I mean, I should not be mandating it. Let's try and understand the difference between the two. Sure. One is mandating from the center that this should be done. The other is state governments voluntarily accepting a particular format given by the central government. So, for example, state government schools becoming affiliated to CBSE, which is a central institution, is the choice of the state government. The other option would be that the central government decides that all schools in the country should be CBSE affiliated. That is wrong. So center should not be defining. Center should play the role of an enabler and allow the states to take a call.
Okay. But anyway, state governments are not doing the right thing in that case, sir, if they are affiliating with the CBSE.
Again, I'm nobody to judge the state government. As Secretary Education, when I used to interact with this state government, I used to carry a value proposition of the idea that I had. Sir. Because I can't impose myself. I should be able to convince, like selling a product.
Sir.
We should be able to convince the buyer that what I am giving them is the right product for them. If I fail, so be it. Sir. But have I done my job? In most of the cases, we don't. We don't do our homework to appropriately sell our product or idea to the states. We believe in imposing. So we, pass a mandate. Ye kariya. No, that is not long lasting. Something is long lasting if you take the stakeholder into confidence, discuss and try and convince them. It may take time, but that's long lasting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. In any case, Ms. Pooja is not going, so will not take a question. The last question, because we already crossed at 1 hour period and we want to close it now. I have it for an hour. I don't want to go a bit further, but if you don't mind, so we'll take one last question from Mr. Dr. Ravindra Reddy. He's a principal of finally introduce him, so I don't know much about him. So I would request him to introduce himself and then ask the question, Dr. Reddy. Please go ahead.
I think.
Dr. Reddy, go ahead.
Yeah.
Ravindra Reddy? Yeah.
I can't hear him.
We are not able to hear you, Mr. Reddy. If you can just check your mic. Mr. Reddy, we are not able to hear you. Can you please check your mic and audio systems? Just a second. Let me try and mute him and unmute him just more. Yeah, can you please try and speak again?
Professor Sharma wants to ask another question. Can we have Professor Sharma?
Sure.
Yeah. Can you enable him to ask the question?
Yes, please.
One, in fact, I know the time is now running short. Sir, you have been in government throughout your life, and we want to learn from you what is governance and what is in fact good governance, because good governance is in fact the hardest currency at the moment, and we would like to know from you what would be good governance for government in office.
You know, Professor Agrawal will have to organize a separate session on good governance. My entire book, which was titled Not Just a Civil Servant, would have been retitled as Making Things Happen in the Government.
Right.
That would, because it speaks about good governance, on the ability of the government to deliver the benefits which is tasked to do. Now, the question is not what. Today, the problem is not of prescription and diagnosis. The problem is of application. And for that, I would require a separate session to explain how to make things happen in the government, how that delivery can happen, how that governance can improve. Please pardon me. It may be difficult for me to explain it in a few minutes as to how governance can possibly improve. I have a few ideas I can share with you.
We would love to hear you again on this topic. This is, of course, a concern which all people of our country have at the moment. We tend to see that those in government are governing us, but not delivering perhaps the good governance of the kind that is expected. And I think,
Professor, I take about 10 days of sessions at Indian School of Public Policy.
Right.
And this is the task that I perform there. I try and explain to those that how governance is happening, how it can possibly happen.
I want to organize a separate session on good governance.
I will be very happy to host another session. I will take Anilji's time, and maybe time in June, first week or so, whenever it is convenient for him, we will maybe organize another session with his permission on good governance, which is very critical and important. And in fact, if you really want, as I said, and asked this question about governments in India, what can the governments do? I think good governance is something which the governments can do to actually induce the happiness, the growth, and this happiness factor. It's not just creating an index or creating a part of GDP, which will help it. But if we can induce that good governance and make people at the end of the day happy with it, I think that's where people would really feel the fruits of happiness, as we have heard and written in that Chandragupta's Maurya period or Ram Rajya's period had been one of the most favored periods in the history of India, as a matter of fact. And that was predominantly also outlined because of the kind of good governance which was being, projected at those periods. So maybe we would love to have you again, sir, on this. Before I end, I must say that, as we felt that the Rig Veda's quote of 189-1 says, let noble thoughts come to us from every side. And that's what motivated me primarily to induce this factor for people like you and Professor Sharma and others who have come, like Ashok and others who have come and spoken and more to come to speak in the ahead. We are going to actually continue this series even after the lockdown is over. We might change the time because 12 o'clock may not suit a large number of people, but we will still hold this series after the lockdown is over to going forward. And just to end, thank you very much, Mr. Sarup, for your time. I will, yeah, please go ahead, sir.
I have just one small request to make to all of you. If possible, please join this movement called Nexus of Good. Just type Nexus of Good on Google and you'll reach there. Please join the movement. It will help us grow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great pleasure.
Thank you. And it will be a great, I think every one of us could be part of this movement and this movement to bring prosperity and positivity in life of each one of us. I think it's a very important cause which Mr. Swaroop has started, and we should support it in whatever form we can. And it's important that we this step right to the session. I would like to tell about what happened for everybody today and tomorrow. Today afternoon, we have a session on technical session on understanding economic indicators from 4 o'clock by Professor Dr. Yamin Agarwal. And then tomorrow we have a professor from Japan, Professor Dr. Junzo Watada, who is a professor from Waseda University, and he is editor of various journals, various committees in India, in various parts of the world. His students are now vice chancellors and rectors of universities for almost now 2 decades that I have, almost 2.5 decades that I have known him as a friend. And then on the 16th, we have one of my students who is now working for a global company, but is a Bharatanatyam dancer, Ms. Shaini Nair, based out of the US. She's an American citizen now, and we'll have her also talk about it because I want people with younger minds also to come in. So I have strategically induced at least 2 people in a month who have about 20 years of experience or so, not to have only everyone saying that only the elderlies are giving us advice, but we must have people with the youth, young people wanting to come in. And that's why we thought we have 2 people at least every month come in with experience of about 15 to 20 years. Thank you, Mrs. Swaroop, for taking this time out. It's a great pleasure. We had a great learning. I had a great learning. Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you, Professor Sharma, to have joined us and stayed with us for this meeting. I'd like to thank everybody who has joined us, all the researchers, professors, academicians, industrialists, and everybody who has joined us today. Thanks everyone who has joined us. Please continue. You're welcome to share this invite with anyone. We have the capacity to almost take it to 1,000 people with no problem at all. Before also I close, we have another prominent person, Professor Deepak Vora, who is also an honorary professor with us, who has been a diplomat and IFS officer, a true son of India as well, to speak on trust, a core human value, which is going to be on Friday from 2 to 3. The session will be on Friday from 2 to 3 on trust, a core human value by Professor Dr. Deepak Vora, an IFS officer. Thank you. Namaskar. Vande Mataram. Jai Hind.